Silas bid on a plow horse with his last $20. A drunk clerk's mistake gave him lot 74 instead. A scarred black stallion so vicious, 3 men couldn't control it. That wrong horse would make him a millionaire. Before we dive into the story, click the like button and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss more incredible stories tomorrow. Leave a comment telling us where you're watching from and what time it is there. Now let's continue with the story. Silas Garrick stood in the dust of the Prescott auction yard that spring morning in 1878, his hat crushed in his hands, watching his future crumble. The Tonto Basin ranch he'd inherited from his father was barely surviving. 3 years of drought had killed half his cattle. His last plow horse broke its leg in a gopher hole 2 weeks back, and without something to pull equipment, he couldn't plant feed crops. He'd come to this auction with his final $20, determined to buy a steady workhorse and nothing else. He'd watched Lot 47 carefully, a reliable-looking bay mare, calm and strong. When the bidding started, his hand went up. $15, $18, $20. The auctioneer's gavel fell, and Silas felt a moment of relief wash through him. Then he walked to the collection pen. The bay mare was being led away by another rancher, a man Silas recognized from town. Silas ran to the auction table, where a red-faced clerk reeked of whiskey and shuffled papers with shaking hands. "There's been a mistake," Silas said. "I bid on lot 47. The clerk squinted at his ledger, ran a dirty finger down the page. "Says here you got lot 74, friend. Paid in full." "That's wrong. I never bid on 74. What even is lot 74? The clerk pointed across the yard. In a reinforced pen stood a black stallion, wild and scarred, its eyes rolling white with fear or rage. 2 auction workers were trying to get close enough to attach a lead rope. The horse screamed and kicked, splintering a fence board. "That devil there," the clerk said, "came from a foreclosed estate up north. Nobody wanted to bid on it. You got it for $20, which is 20 more than it's worth." Silas's stomach dropped. "I didn't bid on that animal. Fix your books. Books are closed. Sale's final. You want to dispute it? Take it up with the auction master. But he left an hour ago." The clerk waved him away and turned to the next customer. Silas walked slowly toward the pen, where 3 men now struggled with the black stallion. The horse was beautiful in a terrible way, all lean muscle and wild power, but its body told a story of abuse. Scars crisscrossed its flanks. Its hooves, though perfectly formed, were cracked from neglect. When it saw Silas approaching, it backed into the corner, trembling. "You the fool who bought this demon?" one of the workers asked. Silas nodded, unable to speak. "Good luck getting him home. Good luck keeping him from killing you." They finally managed to force the stallion into Silas's wagon, a process that took 6 men and left 2 of them bleeding. The horse threw itself against the wagon sides during the entire 3-hour journey back to the Tonto Basin. Silas sat on the driver's bench, listening to the thunder of hooves behind him, wondering how a single mistake at an auction had just destroyed whatever slim chance he'd had of saving his ranch. Virgil, Silas's ranch hand, took one look at the black stallion and shook his head. "That thing's gonna kill somebody." The horse had destroyed half the holding pen within an hour of arriving. It kicked through fence boards, bit at anything that moved, and screamed like something possessed. Silas couldn't get within 10 feet without the animal charging the fence. "Shoot it," Virgil said. "Take the loss and move on. We can't afford to feed a devil." Silas knew Virgil was right. The ranch was dying. The bank would foreclose in 3 months if he couldn't make his payment. He needed a workhorse, not a monster that ate feed they couldn't spare. But that night, Unable to sleep from worry about money and bad choices, Silas walked out to the pen. Moonlight painted the stallion silver. The horse stood in the corner, sides heaving, eyes wild. Then Silas noticed something that made him freeze. The horse wasn't attacking. It was shaking. Silas moved closer, slowly. The stallion's ears flattened, but it didn't charge. It pressed harder into the corner, trembling. Silas saw the scars more clearly now, crisscrossing the animal's flanks in deliberate patterns. Someone had beaten this horse, beaten it badly and often. "What happened to you?" Silas whispered. The horse's eye rolled toward him, white-rimmed with terror. Not vicious, terrified. Silas sat down in the dirt outside the pen. "I know how you feel," he said quietly, backed into a corner with nowhere to go. Everyone expecting you to be something you can't be. He talked to the horse about his father, who'd built this ranch with his hands and left it to Silas with impossible expectations. About the drought that killed the cattle. About standing at that auction, knowing his last $20 had to save everything, and how one drunk clerk had destroyed even that small hope. The stallion stopped trembling. Its ears swiveled forward, listening. Over the next 2 weeks, Silas came to the pen every evening. He didn't try to touch the horse or train it. He just sat and talked. Slowly, the violence faded. The stallion still wouldn't let anyone close, but it stopped trying to kick through the fence. It started eating the feed Silas left. Then one morning, Virgil came running to the house, face pale. "Boss, you need to see this." A well-dressed man stood by the pen, staring at the black stallion like he'd seen a ghost. His horse, a fine sorrel, was tied to the hitching post. The stranger wore a tailored suit that had no place on a struggling ranch. "That brand," the man said when Silas approached. "Where did you get this horse?" Silas explained the auction mistake. The man's face went from shock to something like awe. "Do you know what you have here?" the stranger asked. "That's not just any horse. That's Midnight Sovereign. And if I'm right, you're standing next to a fortune." The stranger introduced himself as Luther Hames, a horse trader from San Francisco. He circled the pen slowly, studying the stallion with the intensity of a jeweler examining a rare diamond. "Augustus Thornborough," Luther said. "You know that name?" Silas shook his head. "Railroad magnate. Died 6 months back. Left debts that would choke a mule. His estate got liquidated fast and dirty." Luther pointed at the brand on the horse's flank, the double diamond with a crown. "Thornborough spent 20 years importing European bloodlines. Paid a fortune to breed champion racehorses. This one came from an English Derby winner." Virgil laughed. "That devil? A racehorse?" Luther's face darkened. "Thornborough's son got drunk one night and decided to break the horse himself. Beat it half to death with a chain. The horse never raced. Everyone assumed it was ruined." He turned to Silas. "How much do you want for it?" "It's not for sale. I'll give you $500, right now. Cash." Silas's breath caught. $500 would save the ranch, pay off 3 months of debt, buy 10 good workhorses. He opened his mouth to say yes, but he looked at the stallion, at those scared eyes that had finally started to trust him, and the word wouldn't come. "Why do you want it?" Silas asked. Luther smiled. "Because if I'm right about this horse's bloodline, and if someone could actually train it, it's worth $50,000. Maybe more." The number hit Silas like a physical blow. 50,000? The Territorial Cup runs in Phoenix this October. Biggest race west of Kansas City. Winner takes 10,000, but that's nothing compared to breeding rights. A proven champion with Midnight Sovereign's lineage? Luther shook his head. Every wealthy rancher from here to California would pay premium fees to breed their mares to him. You'd have buyers lined up for years. That horse can't be ridden, Virgil said. It's broken. Maybe, Luther agreed, but maybe not. I've seen broken horses heal with the right hand. He looked at Silas. You've done something in 2 weeks nobody else managed. That horse lets you near it. That's worth gambling on. What kind of gamble? Luther leaned against the fence. You get this horse race ready by October. I'll enter it in the cup. I'll cover fees, find a jockey, handle the paperwork. Horse wins, we split the purse, 60-40, your favor. More importantly, you own a breeding champion. And if it loses? Then you've got a broken horse you can't sell, and 6 months wasted while your ranch dies. Luther pulled out a leather wallet, thick with bills. Or take my $500 now. Safe money. Smart money. Silas looked at Midnight Sovereign. The horse looked back, ears forward, almost calm. Something beaten, down, but not broken. Something that just needed someone to believe in it. Deal, Silas said, extending his hand. We race. Luther left with a promise to return in a month. Silas stood alone with a decision that felt like standing at the edge of a cliff. Virgil was blunt. You just bet the ranch on a horse that won't let anyone ride it. He was right. The banknote came due in 90 days. Cyrus Treadwell, the wealthy rancher whose land bordered Silas's, had already made an offer to buy the property for half what it was worth. When you're desperate, Treadwell had said with a snake's smile, come see me. 6 months training a broken horse meant 6 months not fixing fences, not buying cattle, not doing anything to save the ranch. If Midnight Sovereign couldn't race, Silas would lose everything. But the alternative was giving up now, and Silas wasn't ready for that. Training started the next morning. Silas approached the pen with a saddle. The stallion exploded backward, screaming, eyes rolling white, every muscle tensed for violence. Silas set the saddle down and walked away. He understood now. Force had broken this horse. Force wouldn't fix it. For 3 weeks he did nothing but exist near the animal. He sat by the pen and talked. He hand-fed oats. He moved slowly, spoke softly, never pushed. Midnight Sovereign watched him with those intelligent, frightened eyes. Then, one morning, the horse walked to Silas instead of away. Let him touch its neck. Let him run a brush along its scarred flanks. Virgil watched from the barn, shaking his head in wonder. I'll be damned. Progress came in tiny steps. A light blanket across the back. Then a saddle pad. Then, after 5 weeks, the saddle itself. Midnight Sovereign trembled, but didn't bolt. But time was bleeding away, and money with it. The bank sent a letter. Payment due in 60 days. Silas sold his father's pocket watch to buy feed, then his rifle, then his spare tack. One evening, Cyrus Treadwell rode up to the ranch. He sat on his expensive horse, looking at Midnight Sovereign with calculating eyes. Heard about your miracle horse, Treadwell said. Heard about your foolish bet, too. What do you want, Cyrus? Just checking on my future property. See, I know you can't make that payment, and I know you're wasting time on a horse instead of saving what's left. He smiled. Doors always open when you're ready to sell. That night, someone cut the fence on Midnight Sovereign's pen. Silas woke to Virgil pounding on his door at dawn. The horse is gone. Silas ran to the empty pen. The cut ropes lay in the dirt. Fresh tracks led into the desert hills, toward the brutal wasteland where nothing survived without water. Midnight Sovereign had disappeared into country that killed men, let alone horses. and Silas had maybe 2 days to find him before both the animal and his last hope died under the merciless sun. Silas tracked the horse into hell itself. The June sun turned the desert into an oven. His canteen ran dry by noon on the second day. His lips cracked and bled. Twice he nearly turned back, knowing he might die out here, chasing a dream that was already dead. But the tracks kept going, and so did he. He found Midnight Sovereign on the third day, trapped in a narrow canyon where flash floods had carved the rock into a maze. The stallion stood in a pool of stagnant water, one leg held off the ground, bleeding from a gash on its shoulder. Silas approached slowly, expecting the horse to bolt. Instead, Midnight Sovereign limped toward him. The animal pressed its head against Silas's chest and stood there, trembling with exhaustion and pain. In that moment, everything changed. This wasn't just a horse anymore. This was trust, given freely by something that had every reason never to trust again. Silas tore his shirt to bandage the wound. He walked the stallion out of the canyon slowly, stopping every hour to rest. The journey home took 2 full days. When they finally arrived at the ranch, Virgil met them with news that made Silas's stomach drop. The bank came. They're foreclosing in 30 days unless you pay in full. And Treadwell's been spreading word around town that you lost the horse. Half the county thinks you're finished. But then Virgil smiled. Other half pooled some money. Not much, but enough to buy you 2 more weeks. He handed Silas a small leather pouch. Folks believe in you. Don't ask me why. The money came from people who had nothing to spare. The blacksmith, the widow who ran the dry goods store, the Mexican family who worked the farm south of town, people who saw a man refusing to quit and decided that was worth something. 3 days later, Luther returned with a rider. The man was lean and dark-skinned, maybe 30, with eyes that seemed to see everything. He wore simple clothes and moved with the quiet confidence of someone who didn't need to prove anything. Nathaniel Roanhorse, Luther said. Best jockey in the territory, half Apache, grew up around horses most people couldn't touch. Nathaniel walked to the pen where Midnight Sovereign stood, still healing from his desert wounds. He studied the horse for a long time without speaking. He's been hurt bad, Nathaniel finally said. Body's healing. But the inside? He shook his head. I can train him. I can teach him to run with a rider. But there's something nobody can teach a horse. What's that? Silas asked. The will to run. Not because he's forced, not because he's afraid, but because he wants to. Nathaniel looked at Silas. This horse needs to remember what it feels like to be free. Until that happens, he'll never win anything. Nathaniel moved into the small bunkhouse and started working with Midnight Sovereign the next morning. He didn't train like anyone Silas had ever seen. No breaking, no dominance, just patience that seemed endless. My grandfather taught me, Nathaniel said one evening. Horses aren't meant to be broken. They're meant to choose. Days turned into weeks. Nathaniel would sit in the pen for hours, barely moving. Then he'd stand and walk away. The next day, he'd brush the horse. The day after, he'd place a hand on its back. Everything moved at the stallion's pace, not his. Silas watched the bank deadline creep closer. 20 days, 15, 10. Luther visited and saw the slow progress. Is he going to be ready? I don't know, Silas admitted. If he's not, you need to tell me now. I can't enter a horse that can't run. But Silas couldn't give up. Not after everything Midnight Sovereign had survived. Not after the horse had chosen to come back to him in that canyon. Then on a Tuesday morning, 7 weeks after Nathaniel arrived, something shifted. Nathaniel climbed onto the stallion's back for the first time. Midnight Sovereign's muscles bunched, ready to explode. Nathaniel leaned forward and whispered something in a language Silas didn't understand. The horse's ears swiveled back, listening. Then forward again. Then it took a step. And another. They walked circles in the pen for an hour, just walking. But the horse carried a rider, something everyone said would never happen. The next morning, Nathaniel opened the gate to the large pasture. He climbed onto Midnight Sovereign's back, leaned forward, and gave the horse its head. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the stallion moved into a trot, then a canter. Then, without warning, it exploded into a full run. Silas had never seen anything move that fast. Midnight Sovereign flew across the pasture like black lightning. Nathaniel crouched low over its neck. The horse wasn't running from fear. It was running because it remembered what it felt like to be powerful and free. When they finally stopped, Nathaniel's face held something like awe. "I've ridden champions," he said quietly. "I've never felt speed like that." Word spread fast. By evening, people started showing up at the ranch. Gamblers, reporters, curious townspeople. They all wanted to see the miracle horse. Cyrus Treadwell came too. He watched Midnight Sovereign run, and his face went hard as stone. "I'll give you $5,000 for that horse," Treadwell said. "Right now. Cash money. More than you'll ever see from some fool race. He's not for sale." Treadwell leaned close. "Then you're a bigger fool than I thought. That horse won't make you rich. It'll make you a laughingstock when it loses." He rode away, but something in his eyes made Silas's skin crawl. 3 days later, Midnight Sovereign collapsed in his pen, foam pouring from his mouth. Silas found the horse thrashing in the dirt, eyes rolled back, body convulsing. Virgil ran for the veterinarian, while Silas held Midnight Sovereign's head, begging him to fight. The vet arrived an hour later, took one look, and shook his head. "Poison. Someone put something in his water. Probably hemlock root. Will he live? Maybe, but he'll be weak for months. He'll never race." Silas sat with the horse all night. At dawn, Midnight Sovereign's breathing finally steadied. The convulsions stopped. But when the stallion tried to stand, his legs shook and gave out. Virgil found the evidence at first light. The water trough had been tampered with, and fresh boot prints led toward Treadwell's property. But prints weren't proof, and everyone knew Treadwell had money enough to buy his way out of anything. Luther arrived that afternoon with news that made everything worse. Treadwell's entered a horse in the Territorial Cup. California Gold, a champion from San Francisco. Cost him $10,000 just to buy it. He paused. "He's also paid off 2 race officials. I have it on good authority the race is fixed." "Then we can't win even if the horse recovers," Nathaniel said quietly. "No," Luther agreed. "You can't." Silas looked at Midnight Sovereign, lying weak in the pen. The race was 2 weeks away. The horse could barely stand. Even if by some miracle he recovered enough to run, they'd be racing against a champion in a rigged competition. Virgil put a hand on Silas's shoulder. "It's over, boss. Time to let it go." Nathaniel said nothing, but Silas saw the defeat in his eyes. The jockey had given weeks of his life to this horse, and for what? A poisoned animal that would never fulfill its promise. That night, Treadwell himself rode up to the ranch. He dismounted slowly, making a show of looking at the weak stallion. "Shame about your horse," he said. "I'd still buy him, even in this condition. Say $500? Get off my land." "Your land?" Treadwell laughed. "You mean my land. The land you'll be selling me next week when the bank takes it. I'm being generous, Garrick. Take the money. At least walk away with something." "I said get off my land." Treadwell's smile vanished. "You don't know when you're beaten. That's always been your problem." He leaned close. "I'll buy this place at auction for half what it's worth. Then I'll put that broken horse down myself. Think about that while you're packing." After he left, Silas sat by the pen. Midnight Sovereign had dragged himself to the fence, head hanging low, but eyes still watching Silas. "I'm sorry," Silas whispered. "I thought we could do this. I thought we could win." The horse pressed its nose against his hand. Even broken and poisoned, it was still trying to trust him. Silas made his decision. They would race anyway. They loaded Midnight Sovereign into the wagon at dawn. The horse could walk now, but he'd lost weight and muscle. His coat, once gleaming black, looked dull. When they arrived in Phoenix, the crowd's laughter hit like physical blows. "That's the miracle horse," someone shouted. "Looks half dead." California Gold stood in the neighboring stall, a magnificent chestnut stallion with perfect conformation and arrogant eyes. Its owner, a San Francisco businessman named Vance, smirked when he saw Midnight Sovereign. "Treadwell paid good money for that win," Vance said to Luther. "Shame you. Wasted the entry fee." The betting boards told the story. California Gold, 2-1 favorite. Midnight Sovereign, 50-1. Dead last. Nathaniel checked the saddle twice, his face unreadable. "He's not ready," he said quietly to Silas. "His lungs are still weak. His legs aren't strong enough. We shouldn't do this." "I know." "Then why are we here?" Silas looked at the stallion. "Because he came back to me in that canyon. Because he chose to trust when he had every reason not to. Because giving up on him now would be worse than losing." As they prepared for the race, Treadwell appeared through the crowd. He walked straight to Silas, close enough that no one else could hear. "Last offer," Treadwell said. "Throw the race. Pull up at the half-mile. I'll clear all your debts plus $2,000. You lose anyway. Might as well profit from it." Silas's fist caught Treadwell square in the jaw. The man went down hard. Guards rushed over, but Treadwell waved them off, wiping blood from his mouth. "You'll regret that," he said, climbing to his feet. "When you're broke and homeless, remember you chose this." The horses lined up at the starting gate. 10 entries total. California Gold in the prime middle position. Midnight Sovereign drew the outside, the worst spot on the track. The crowd pressed against the rails, thousands of people who'd come to see champions run. When they saw the scarred black stallion, thin and shaking, the jeers grew louder. Nathaniel climbed into the saddle. Midnight Sovereign's legs trembled beneath him. The jockey leaned down to the horse's ear and whispered in his native language. Words his grandfather had taught him about courage and freedom. The starter raised his pistol. Silas's heart hammered so hard he thought it might break through his ribs. Everything he owned, everything he'd fought for, came down to the next 2 minutes. A broken horse against a champion in a fixed race with impossible odds. The pistol fired. California Gold exploded from the gate like a cannonball. The other horses surged forward in a thunder of hooves and dust. Midnight Sovereign stumbled, nearly fell, then found his stride. But he was already 10 lengths behind, and the race had barely begun. For the first half-mile, Midnight Sovereign ran in the middle of the pack, struggling. California Gold led easily, pulling ahead with every stride. Vance's jockey didn't even use the whip. They were winning by pure superiority. The crowd roared for the champion. Nobody watched the scarred black horse fighting just to keep up. At the 3/4 mark, 2 horses ahead of Midnight Sovereign began to fade. Nathaniel guided the stallion around them, moving up to 5th place. Then Orth. Silas gripped the rail so hard his knuckles went white. The horse was giving everything. But it wasn't enough. California Gold had opened a 6-length lead. The race was already over. Then something changed. Midnight Sovereign's stride lengthened. His head came up. Nathaniel felt it happen. The moment when the horse stopped running from pain and started running, because he remembered what it meant to be powerful. 3rd place. 2nd place. The crowd noise shifted from celebration to confusion. That scarred horse, the one everyone had laughed at, was accelerating while every other horse was tiring. California Gold still led by 4 lengths with a quarter-mile left. Vance's jockey glanced back, saw Midnight Sovereign coming, and reached for his whip. But Nathaniel never touched his whip. He leaned forward over the stallion's neck, moving with the horse instead of against it, and whispered one word. Free. Midnight Sovereign flew. The gap closed to 3 lengths. 2 lengths. The crowd was screaming now, on their feet, watching something impossible happen. The broken horse that shouldn't be racing was running down a champion. 1 length. California Gold's jockey used the whip again and again. The chestnut stallion was giving everything, running with perfect form, doing exactly what champions do. It wasn't enough. At the final turn, Midnight Sovereign pulled even. The 2 horses thundered toward the finish line neck and neck. 20 yards left. 15. 10. Nathaniel didn't push. He didn't demand. He simply trusted. Midnight Sovereign surged ahead by half a length and crossed the finish line first. The crowd exploded. People who'd bet against the black horse were screaming anyway, caught up in witnessing something they'd never see again. A horse that had been beaten, broken, poisoned, and left for dead had just defeated a champion. Silas couldn't breathe, couldn't think. Virgil was pounding his back, shouting something, but the words wouldn't register. Then Nathaniel rode Midnight Sovereign back to the winner's circle, and the horse wasn't trembling anymore. His head was high, his eyes clear. He looked like what he'd always been meant to be. Before Silas could reach him, 3 men in expensive suits pushed through the crowd. Behind them came Luther, his face split by the biggest smile Silas had ever seen. "Gentlemen," Luther announced, "meet the new owner of the most valuable breeding stallion in the territory." The $10,000 purse felt unreal in Silas's hands. He paid the bank that afternoon, saving the ranch with money to spare. But Luther was right. The purse was nothing compared to what came next. 3 breeding operations made offers before sunset. By the end of the week, Luther had negotiated contracts that would pay Silas steady income for years. Midnight Sovereign would stand at stud, and every wealthy rancher from Arizona to California wanted their mares bred to the legend. Within a month, the offers reached $40,000. Within 6 months, Midnight Sovereign's first foals were born, and buyers fought over them. Newspapers called him the resurrection horse, the stallion that rose from abuse and poison to become a champion. Silas renamed his property Sovereign Springs. He bought back 3 neighboring ranches that had been foreclosed and returned them to the families who'd lost them. The people who'd pooled money to help him when he had nothing got paid back 10 times over. Cyrus Treadwell lost everything. The race officials he'd bribed got caught, and his name went down with theirs. His ranch sold at auction. He left the territory in disgrace, and nobody mourned his going. Nathaniel stayed on as Silas's partner. Together they trained the next generation, teaching young horses with patience instead of force. Their methods became famous. People traveled from across the country to learn from the men who'd proven that broken things could become priceless. On quiet evenings, Silas still sat with Midnight Sovereign in the pasture. The horse was older now, calmer, a gentle giant who let children pet his nose and feed him sugar cubes. The scars were still there, but they told a different story now. Not of pain, but of survival. Of choosing to trust again when trust seemed impossible. "We did it," Silas would say, running his hand along the stallion's neck. "Nobody thought we could, but we did." The horse that nobody wanted at that auction, the mistake that should have destroyed everything, had taught Silas the most valuable lesson of his life. Sometimes the wrong choice turns out to be exactly right. Sometimes the broken things are the ones worth fighting for. And sometimes, when you refuse to give up on something everyone else has abandoned, you don't just save it. You save yourself, too. Midnight Sovereign lived another 15 years, siring champions and building a legacy that lasted generations. But his greatest achievement wasn't the races his offspring won or the fortune he created. It was proving that with patience, trust, and the courage to believe in impossible things, even the most damaged souls can become magnificent. The rancher who bought the wrong horse at auction became a millionaire. But more than that, he became the man who understood that sometimes our biggest mistakes lead us exactly where we're meant to be. If this story touched your heart, click the like button and subscribe to the channel. Tomorrow, we have another incredible story that will leave you speechless. Don't miss it.